Hello New Zealand, my name's William Boyd. My new James Bond novel Solo is now available to buy in bookstores and I very much hope that you enjoy it. Well, Solo starts in 1969 when James Bond is 45 years old, interestingly enough, born in 1924, and he's sent on a mission to a small West African country which is involved in a brutal civil war, and his instructions from M are to somehow stop the war. No pressure. So he goes to West Africa, and events conspire to bring about a conclusion to the war in which Bond is very closely involved. But it doesn't all end happily. There's a series of things go drastically wrong, including Bond almost being killed, shot 3 times. And so the second half of the novel, which in a way explains its title, is Bond exacting retribution. Because of what went wrong in Africa, he goes after the people who damaged him, and they happen to be in the USA, in Washington, D.C., in fact. And so the second half of the novel, in a way, is James Bond's revenge. And it comes about also, but very bloodily and brutally and not fully resolved. So that in essence is the story of Solo, and it explains the title because he's unauthorized. This revenge mission of Bond is not something he is told to do, it's something he does under the radar. And he changes identity, and nobody knows this is happening. But that's why it's called Solo. Well, the settings of the novel, one of them popped into my head immediately when I was asked by the Fleming family if I had any idea where I would set the novel. And because I was born in Africa and raised there, and I realized as they asked me that question, I thought Bond never went to Africa really. In fact, he does go briefly in Diamonds Are Forever, but there's never been a real Bond novel set in Africa, and because that's my background and upbringing, I said Africa spontaneously, not thinking about it. But then when I did reflect further, and when I realized that the novel was going to be set in 1969, I was able to draw on my own life and my own biography, because I was living in, or I lived for periods of time in Nigeria during the Nigerian Civil War, the Biafran War, and it had a profound effect on me as a person. And so I thought I could use my experiences of living in Africa, living in an African country that's torn apart by a civil war, and as it were, give it to Bond, or bring Bond into it. And so I created this country called Zanzirim, which is loosely based on Nigeria at the time. And it's West Africa, part of Africa I know best, and you know, dropped James Bond into it. And then, because of the way events unfold, part 2 of the novel, which is Bond's Revenge, I thought, where could that take place that was interesting? And I thought to go from a sort of a small African country, perfect contrast would be America, you know, then in the height of its power and pomp. And I thought, rather than go to New York or Los Angeles, I'd choose a city again. I don't think that Bond ever visits in the novels, Washington, D.C. And I know Washington, D.C. quite well, funnily enough. I've been there many times. But the city in 1969 was totally different from the city today. It was a very dangerous city, possibly the most dangerous city in America, which is bizarre given it's the capital of the USA. But so I thought, what a perfect contrast. Small West African country, USA, capital city. And so those were that was the thinking that drove my choices. I think that my favourite character, aside from Bond, and everything, interesting, this is another slight departure from the Fleming novels, everything in the novel is seen from Bond's point of view, so he's absolutely at the centre of the book. But there are a lot of characters I've created. I shouldn't say I'm quite fond of the villain, Cobus Breed. He's a particularly nasty psychopath, but I was rather pleased at the kind of portrait I painted of Cobus Breed. But there are also minor characters that I like. There's Bond's secretary, Araminta Beecham, who briefly appears. There's a rather feckless English journalist called Digby Breadalbane, who I like a lot. But I think and of course, the two women that Bond has affairs with in the novel, I particularly like. But I think I decided to give Bond a more mature lover, somebody close to his own age in 1969, and so I've invented this rather beautiful actress who appears in sort of sleazy B-movie horror films called Bryce, and she is, I think, a real living, breathing character, and you can't call her a Bond girl because she's in her late 30s, but she's a real match for him, and so I'm particularly pleased with Bryce, I must say.